want to fast forward into your career. The first fight you ever announced was a Mike Tyson fight.
Yep. And I was assigned to boxing by a newly incoming executive at
Hmm.
ABC Sports who arrived with one predilection about the sports division, which was who is Jim Lampley and how do I get rid of him? And how do I get this salary off the books? And how
Hmm.
do I get his Olympic assignment guarantees out of my way so that I can do what I want to do here? And the method he chose for trying to alienate me and get rid of me at ABC Sports was to assign me to boxing. He thought
Mm.
this is a sport where he won't fit. He's a spit and polished, preppy kid from the South, et cetera. There's no way that he's going to understand or fit into the boxing world. He had no idea that I had seen way more Gillette Friday night fights than he had seen, that I
Hmm.
had been watching that all through my youth and in childhood. He had no idea that Muhammad Ali was my idol in life. None of those things were in his thought process when he assigned me to boxing. He also did not seem to realize that the network had signed a get acquainted, look see contract with a 19-year-old heavyweight from upstate New York, whose
Hmm.
name was Mike Tyson. So
Hmm.
my very first network television boxing exposure was calling Mike Tyson versus Jesse Ferguson in Glens Falls, New York, with a brilliant expert commentator named Alex Wallow, who was actually an executive at the network, not,
Mm.
an announcer. And Alex was a preppy, spit and polished Greenwich kid who had begun coming to boxing gyms in New York as a little boy and continued all through his teenage years and through his 20s and upbringing and everything. So Alex and I went to Glens Falls, New York together for Tyson versus Jesse Ferguson. And you'll recall, of course, that in the fifth round, Tyson threw an uppercut that exploded Ferguson's nose. I mean, detonated it. And there was blood all over the ring. It was a spectacular, theatrical knockout. Eventually, the referee stopped the fight because there was blood all over the place. And in the post fight interview, Alex went, forget whether he was in the ring or at ringside. I think he was in the ring. And he first question was, Mike, tell me about the uppercut. And Mike said, Cat D'Amato taught me that the purpose of the uppercut was to drive the nose bone into the opponent's brain. I was trying to drive his nose bone into his brain. And I was standing at ringside thinking, oh my gosh, look at what I've happened into here. This kid is not only going to be the number one quote machine in boxing, he's going to be the number one quote machine in sports. And within the next couple of weeks, they all came rolling out. Boxing is a hurt business. Everybody's got a plan until you hit it, et cetera, et cetera. He was amazing at that time.
What was it like living in the moment where he's coming up knocking everybody out, 1 round, 2 rounds, 3 rounds, four, and even when he got to the championship level where he fought Trevor Berbick, knocked him out in the second round, knocked out Michael Spinks and won, a guy who has 2 wins over
I
Larry
called
Holmes.
the Spinks fight, and I had watched Spinks beat up Jerry Cooney, and I thought, Spinks did what he did to Cooney. He can handle a puncher like this, et cetera, et cetera. Wrong, gone in 31 seconds.
What
Mike was incredible at that point.
what is his legacy? Because some people like to dismiss how great he was because he doesn't have a name on his resume like a Ali, like a Frazier, like a Holyfield or Lennox Lewis. He never beat one of those guys. He has a good resume, but not great. Where would you say his legacy? What would you say is his legacy?
Well, I think you want to be realistic. He was the product of the greatest matchmaking campaign of all time. Bill Caton and Jimmy Jacobs were brilliant managers. Jimmy, in particular, had a tremendous knack for understanding which fights Mike would dominate and win easily. Um, when he was beginning his career, and the first 17 fights were all spectacular knockouts. He was knocking guys through the air. He was knocking them out of the ring, et cetera, et cetera. Um, Jimmy and Bill put together a videotape compendium of all of Mike's knockouts at one
Hmm.
point. There were at least a dozen of them on the tape. And it's just 6 or 7 seconds at a time because the purpose of the tape was for local television sports directors to be able to use this to fill out their space on 11 o'clock news broadcasts. At that
Mhm.
moment in time, we're in the local news era, and every sports director in the country had to be able to fill 3.5 or 4 minutes with
Mhm.
sports material on the 11 o'clock news. And in many markets, Indianapolis, for instance, there wasn't enough going on to be able to easily fill that amount of time. So to get this piece of tape that showed a dozen or more knockouts in rapid fire succession, and they're all overwhelmingly theatrical, was a godsend to local
Mm.
sports directors. And everybody in the country at the local level at some point saw Mike Tyson before they ever saw a live Mike Tyson fight. And for a lot of them, the first live Mike Tyson fight they saw was the Jesse Ferguson fight. I was trying to drive his nose bone into his brain. So Mike was like a cartoon character. He was spectacular, and almost beyond belief. And it was easy to adopt the point of view that this guy is going to destroy everybody in front of him and absolutely take over and rule the heavyweight division. If you bought into that, you were forgetting the fact that he was 5'10", that he was essentially a power puncher. He had some other skills, but he didn't have what you would call the entire package, that he did not have experience against a lot of different styles. When he went into the heavyweight tournament on HBO, the legitimate truth began to show up, and everybody forgets this. It's amazing how many people only remember the first thing they saw of Mike Tyson and forget the reality of this. You're right. He knocked Berbick down 3 times with 1 punch. But then as that tournament continued, he went the distance with James Bone Crusher Smith. He went the distance with Jose Ribalta, or at least to the last 10 seconds with Jose Ribalta. He went the distance here in Madison Square Garden with Mitch Blood Green. These were not great fighters. These were guys who were taller, longer. Some of them had a right hand they could bring over the top that was difficult for Mike to see. If you had been paying really close attention to all of that, if you were thoroughly analytical about all of that, you might have said to yourself, Buster Douglas, 6'4", 235 pounds, a real athlete, a former college basketball player, does indeed throw a right hand directly over the top where Mike can't see it. You might have said to yourself, Douglas is not a 42-1 underdog. He should perhaps be the favorite in the fight. So what happened February 10, 1990 in Tokyo, if you look back and pay attention to everything I just listed as the precursors, it's not that big a shock. Now, I'm not going to tell you that it wasn't a shock to me, all right? Because I was still the product of my background with Mike and my belief that Mike was largely unbeatable. The first time I went to Tokyo, he knocked out Tony Tubbs in 4 rounds. That was the Mike that I was accustomed to. But if I had paid a lot of attention, and I was at the Mitch Blood Green fight in Madison Square Garden, I remember just thinking, oh, okay, it was a bad night. It wasn't just a bad night. Taller, longer guys were always capable of giving Mike more difficulty. And ultimately, that showed up throughout his career.
Okay. So his dominance during his era, you don't think it's enough for him to be rated with the other all-time greats?
Is he Joe Louis?
Well, is he in that conversation is more what I'm saying. In that conversation
I
with
just
Ali,
saw,
Lewis, Frazier,
do you know Tom
Foreman.
Hauser?
Yeah, I don't know him personally, but I know who you're talking about.
Okay, so Tom Hauser just put out an article. I believe it's about the top 20 heavyweights of all time. It might be top 25. Tyson is number 6 or number 7. That's a pretty good ranking.
Sounds
Might
about
be
right.
might be number 9, something like that. But he's
Okay.
not Joe Louis. He's not.
Well, Joe Louis, I think, is probably number 1 or 2, depending on who you got, him or Ali. So if you're saying he's not Joe Louis, I don't think that's an insult.
On Hauser's list, it was 1 Ali, and this was a poll of boxing writers, all of them top boxing writers.
Okay.
It was Ali number 1. It was Louis number 2.
Yeah,
I
sounds
believe
about right.
Dempsey was in the top 5. Holmes was ahead of Tyson, and there were others. So
Okay.
the bottom line is, realistically, he was really good, but there were limitations. and the limitations eventually showed up.